I'm Raja, uh, and I have been teaching at the IDC School of Design at IIT Bombay.
Hi, I'm Swarup Dutta, and I'm a practicing scenographer and designer, and I work out of Calcutta. To ask you that, at IDC, how are you guys looking at AI at the moment, and in terms of curriculum, what the future holds, how do we mitigate that?
All right. So that's an interesting starting point, I would think. Well, like many of the buzzwords, whether it's virtual reality or UI UX or now AI, uh, everyone wants to be on the bandwagon and so on. Particularly the younger colleagues who are under all kinds of pressure to perform and prove themselves, etc. And students, of course, are the first to sort of latch on to these buzzwords. So we have our share of young faculty who are wanting to start virtual reality labs and get into AI and so on. But recently I was working on an art project where we had commissioned a young talented alumnus, a sculptor, to come and make the work. And before he came, there was some time, and so I used AI to ask me and ask it and create some of the sculptures, and I did a reasonably good job. But I realized that you have to be able to give the AI good prompts.
Right.
The response that AI gives you clearly depends on the prompts that you put in, and there some
Or the money you pay in terms of subscription, no?
Not really. I started with a free version. At some point, I bought something,
Okay.
but what matters is actually the prompt. What do you ask AI? And there, I must say that some experience does help. Uh, and what it generated was quite good, and I'm sure that in some years' time it will really, get fabulous. So there's no question about what it can deliver. So, for example, it is, animation. You heard of that Miyazaki kind of
Yes, of
episode,
course.
right? So you have a great story idea, and you tell AI, these are my characters, and out comes the animated film, and there go all your hard years of labor of learning animation, and. But at the same time, I must say that even if they build in what looks like hand done, that will be some time before they can achieve that kind of AI, which gives you it has currently got a little bit of polish, which looks like a badly done makeup job and so on. Right? So you can smell AI in that sense, right?
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I was also mitigating
Yeah.
as an early dabbler, and I decided to emulate styles which are more retro, and it actually gives a very, very good result. Also, in terms of comprehending 3D, it has still a bit of a problem. But if it's 2D sketches, especially hand done sketch style, it does it with perfection. But what's also interesting is, which is what I wanted to know from you, that I also feel that, see, you're visually describing something, right? So, how important do you think language is becoming? That's also because of the new generation and the kind of language we're using at the moment, especially youngsters. Do you think describe, because do you think you need mastery over language, and so the language in at least certain settings, let's say in ChatGPT, is becoming important, where if you can't articulate, then you don't get the same results, and it doesn't then sort of depend on your other faculties and in your sort of um, in your sort of verbal articulation or written articulation.
Mm. Yes, language of course does matter, but I would think that what gives a strength to a certain question or a certain voice, I would think, is clearly what we call as experience. Um, uh, because even with simple words, you can frame a very good question.
You can.
So
Sure.
that's possible. And that comes from experience. So there, I feel. So for me, people kind of make it sort of a debate where you say, should AI be there? Should AI not be there? To me, it's
Yeah,
just a
that's
tool.
tool,
It's just a tool.
absolutely.
I mean, no need to make such a big
Big
deal
deal
of.
about it.
Yes. So.
Well, it's
And it's
also
a
a
very
question of authorship. Again, we were talking about it today in this session.
Hmm.
I was, I basically gave a prompt because I wanted a portrait of Avalokiteshvara, the benevolent. Yes, of course.
holding the
Yeah, so with his 1,000 hands and 1,000 faces because he's listening, the benevolent sort of with his God, and it's quite interesting that I told it to render it in the Thanka style, of course, and then I told it to render in the Tibetan Thanka style as opposed to the Mongolian Thanka style as opposed to the Chinese Thanka style, and it actually gave very interesting sort of renditions.
Mhm.
But it also raises this question of of appropriation, no, in a certain way.
Mhm.
While I don't practice, I'm also using a certain language which necessarily I don't have any proprietary over.
Mhm.
So till it's an experimentation, it's great. But
Mm.
do you think beyond that there could be I mean, of course, a lot of questions are being asked and copyrights are being flouted in the process.
Mhm.
But how does learning happen if the artificial intelligence doesn't learn from human experiences, right? And art is also a part of it, isn't it? Like the vocabulary is a part of learning, isn't it? So it's a layered one, but I'm also trying to mitigate how do we look at it, do we then look at a certain style and if it becomes, if it is of a certain individual, then it's okay not to use it, but so it's a no-go. But again, see, if it's a style which is again traditional or craft-based, then we see a proprietary and we do things. So I was really thinking, where do we go from here? How do we set up frameworks where we use the tool maybe more ethically?
Mhm. Well, I think the ethical question, maybe I'll try and come to that a little later. Before we get to the ethical dimension, uh, let me say something which, in some way, try and explain what one means when we say that it's just a tool. Uh, and for that, let me sort of say a few good things in favor of AI. So AI, essentially, one way of describing AI is that it's a collective sort of a knowledge that we have gathered as human beings. And it is interesting that that knowledge is now available, assuming that there is a certain amount of there's a democratic way of putting together the knowledge, and it's not biased or gendered in some skewed way and all of that, assuming that all that is eventually taken care of. What we have is we have access to a collective wisdom, which I think is incredible. I mean,
I agree with you.
and what that should do in some way is, well, it kind of equips us now to leap to some unknown realm which otherwise we could not have because we did not have access to. So, in a much simpler way, I'm amazed by the kind of manner in which AI can articulate quite accurately the answers to very complex questions. In less than 5 seconds, you get for one very nice full-page summary of the key things that it captures. Now, but the question is, after having gotten those answers, well, what do you do with it? Because I think creativity essentially is a foray into the unknown. So AI is what we know. It's a collective knowledge of what humankind knows so far. But it knows little about other realms which we haven't really ever gone into, and there clearly AI is of no help in some sense, right? So what do you do with the answers that AI gives you? Well, good. I mean, at least you don't what shall I say? You don't have to take the trouble of reading 100 books and trying to assimilate them. Very soon you'll get a very nice summary. So that's good, and you should therefore make use of that. So you don't have to read 100 books in 5 seconds. You have a very nice summary of any complex subject, right? But then the question is, well, where do you want to go? I mean, and there AI doesn't tell you where you want to go. So there I would think, clearly human beings have to figure where they want to go.
Do you also think that, I'm saying we,
but the ethical question I'll come to a little later, because it's, well, to me, for example, I've often spoken to artists who, for whatever reason, are hesitant to take up social themes. And there is some clue to the answer to your question there. Why are some artists a little reluctant to take up social themes very often? They would rather, because in some sense, I think art does pursue higher goals in some sense. Ethics is slightly, I'm not for a second devaluing the value of ethical living, ethical dimension. But I think art is answerable to higher laws in some sense. So in that sense, I'm not too worried if somebody is appropriating something. Well, you can't help it in some sense. You can't stop human beings from
getting inspired. If I may say so, because
yeah. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. I mean, if there are real ethical transgressions, I'm sure there will be mechanisms to address that, and there'll be courts which will award penalties and so on. You just need a regulatory framework for that. So that's not a difficult thing. Yeah.
So now you're saying it's a fairly blurred up playing ground.
In what sense?
I think we really don't have.
We don't have any.
We
have no idea what's AI at the moment. We are still trying to get our arms around the monster and so on. But in some years' time, I'm sure there will be. I mean, for example, when Photoshop came in or whatever.
Yeah. I mean,
or for that matter, the camera came in. So
digital cameras, especially. Also.
yeah.
So, do you think the way we are responding to it, I'm saying we in the sense that, in a certain age bracket that we are, as opposed to the youngsters, and I think that it would become almost second skin for them, because I think we're still grappling with it. A lot of them, I think, in our late 40s, early 50s, are, it's a slightly difficult transition, as opposed to a lot of youngsters, I think.
No, the question which I think is of interest for me to understand is, will the younger generation who are born with smartphones, will they, in some sense, at some point feel they have to drop their phones in water, as we often ask them to do? Will they feel it themselves? Because they sense that there is something they are missing out. I don't know if that will happen or not, but, being in that sense old-fashioned, I would like to believe that there will be a corrective action of that kind, and you do see that. I do see young people who are looking for life which is outside the phone.
Digital detox, as we call it.
You call it digital detox. Yeah. So, and that's you're going by your experience and your gut human feeling. Don't worry. I mean, they are at the moment enamored by the tool, but at some point they will come out of it. I mean, or if it is indeed so good, let them not come out of it. You know. So, once in our campus in IIT Bombay, and he was sitting on the stage, and there were questions being asked. And one student asked him, "Sir, what do you think of artificial intelligence?" So the Dalai Lama sort of peered at the chap in the manner that he peers at them, as though he didn't comprehend the question. And then after a little while, he kind of guffawed. He just laughed. And he didn't answer the question. He just laughed. He said, "Artificial intelligence, ha 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 ha." That's all he said. Now it's for us to interpret his laugh. And I would think that, intelligence, is something that human beings are inherently born with, right? And therefore, there's absolutely no, hesitation, no doubt that that's of unmatched. I mean, scientifically speaking, the amount of, I don't know if computers have that much. Of course, maybe they have more processing power, but this thing which we call as consciousness is different from the mind, and there people have kind of debated this in Indian philosophy. Is the mind the same as consciousness? So that, I think, artificial intelligence is not conscious in some sense. It's just a machine which.
But what stops it? I mean, sorry, I'm extending the conversation. What stops it from becoming self-conscious?
No,
it's just a matter of putting. See, what is an open-ended program, right? You're taking feedback to learn, right? And so how do you become intelligent, right? You take an action, and then when you analyze your action, you take feedback, and then you go back and do things differently or the same way, right? So this whole loop, if it's programmed, what stops it from becoming sort of self-aware?
No, let me put it slightly differently, maybe in the form of a question, so let us speak of, I don't know if I'm reducing the earlier question to a less complex one, but let's think of a 3D printer which is printing out a exquisite, beautiful pot, let's say. And maybe it'll print out a pot which human hands can never shape, of that nature. Now the thing is, I would think the question I would ask is a machine capable of feeling any joy when it does that, right? And so whether it's conscious or not is okay, I grant it consciousness also. But are you also saying that the machine also felt the same joy that the human being feels when writing a script or making a pot or dancing?
See, eventually, if it's about electrical impulses, which is communicating certain emotions, to us, from sensory to cognitive, can't it be coded, achieved?
No. So just imagine that, you are dancing and there's the Bharatanatyam or the whatever you're really good at dancing, and there's a robot which you are programmed to dance better than you. And maybe the robot has feelings and consciousness and all of that, and the two of you are dancing, right? So, but would you? I mean, I would think that
I'd say different experiences,
yeah.
But I mean, I can't belittle that experience. It's just another being, isn't it?
Isn't there a film of that nature where there's this beautiful woman who's actually a robot and this guy is fallen in love with her?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think one of the first ones that I saw in this genre was this one called Existence. This came out in early 2000.
Okay.
It's interesting that these guys who are getting bored of their life, and the morbidity of it. So they basically have two ports drilled into the head, and then you can teleport them to any place. So you can go to parallel situations, but there are cues of how you can get back to your natural one. So the film eventually goes to a point where you don't know which reality you're living. So, so reinforcing what I was saying, eventually it's about electrical impulses, right? So what we tangibly think is so real is just electrical impulses telling, taking information from our sensory organs to our brain. And if there are interceptors, what is reality? Isn't it? Like, can't it be transformed? Can't it be...
No, I'll ask you the question once again. In a slightly different mode. I'm assuming for a minute that you are straight and you don't have an alternate sexuality. So in front of you is a beautiful robo woman and a real beautiful woman. Yeah. And you know that marrying the real beautiful woman is fraught with all kinds of danger, and you might sort of have a terrible time together, whereas life with a robo woman is more or less guaranteed to be smooth and perfect and all of that, right?
But that question's already answered. There's so many in Japan who are choosing a
robo
woman.
Forget Japan. I'm asking you. So would you marry the robo woman or the imperfect human?
We can have all kinds of choices, and we respect that. I mean, I'm sure somebody would. As of now, I think I would choose the real woman, but I don't know. No. Till I see the option, I don't know. I may. Who knows? But I think maybe we can end here and leave the discussion, I think.